What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of V4T Your Eternity. This is episode 8, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
Mm-hmm. So, we're continuing on with. Most of this episode was focused on Gugu, of course. While Fushi is, of course, like he has some scenes, but he was mainly in the back burner, like he always is with pretty much for the majority of this series. So of course, we start off with the episode with Rin coming back to the shop where Gugu and Fushi work at, and she decides that she wants to work there as well, and
she wants to live there.
Yeah, and
I was kind of wondering why, because it's like, as far as we know, she's like some kind of royalty, I guess, and I'm assuming she must live in like a really nice house. So I'm just wondering, like, why does she want to live there?
Yeah, I mean, there has to be a reason. I mean, we'll probably have. It's possible we might find out her story probably by the next episode. Probably based on the previous. But as far as we know, like she someone of her status just is interested in working and staying there, of course. And of course, like she also mentions that the wound on her arm due to the accident. I think she said like 3 months ago hasn't even healed yet. So Gugu decides to ask the booze man, if he has any like remedies to help with with her injury. And then all of a sudden, the old man like apparently like opens his mask, pulls a cork out of his eye, and extracts booze from his face, which I don't know. I don't know how something like that works.
Yeah, we learned apparently like he's like his body is just full of booze or liquor, and I have no idea how he's living like that, but yeah, like I mean, because at first when I saw that scene, I thought it was just like I was like, what is he even getting out of it? And he said he like made some kind of remedy or drink with it or something, and I'm like, how? But it's like, I was guessing he just must have extracted his saliva or something, but we find it's actually booze. he just has booze in his body.
I mean, I know. We know like Gugu has like major facial injuries that pretty much permanently disfigured him. But putting booze in his stomach, I was just surprised. Like Gugu's like remaining sober throughout that entire time that he's been like that. But
yeah, like I was wondering the same thing. I'm like, how is that not affecting him, having all that in his body?
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. Like about how the booze man is able to do something like that, and of course, like Gugu is not happy about that, and he asks the booze man to get rid of it, but he said the booze man says that there's nothing he can do. It pretty much the treatment that he gave to Gugu is pretty much irreversible at this point. So there's no way for him to to get it all out all at once. So Gugu decides to quit his job there and then just leave altogether. And of course, well, actually, no. Before this happens, it's like we see like several scenes with Gugu and Fushi talking to each other, with Gugu asking him how his immortality works. And of course asking Fushi if he can do anything else besides transforming into other people or different animals. So Fushi decides to pull out a spear that he got injured with back in one of the previous episodes. So what Gugu decides to do is he decides to experiment on Fushi by just pretty much like deliberately injuring him with different weapons or different stuff around the household. So he cuts him with a knife, which causes Fushi to form the exact same replica of the knife. Then of course Gugu also takes out a torch and then burns Fushi with it, and then Fushi decides to is able to form the torch stick from it. Of course he can't form the fire that he was burned with, and of course Fushi doesn't take too kindly with that, and it kind of like he kind of distances himself from Gugu shortly afterwards.
Yeah, and of course Gugu was also disappointed he couldn't recreate the fire.
Mm-hmm. but like I said earlier, like Gugu decides, to quit his job and then work back at his old job before his disfigurement. So like the scene switches like back and forth between Gugu and Fushi. For Fushi's point of view, like he tries to help around in the house, but most of the time it's just unsuccessful. He doesn't know how to cook. He doesn't know how to properly clean the place, and he doesn't know how to properly do gardening work. And it gets to the point where Fushi decides that he needs to learn how to do a lot of these tasks properly. So he tries to ask what was it, Piran, the old woman, her help, but she mentions that he needs to get Gugu to help him out with all those tasks. And of course, like no matter what, like Fushi tries to do, like even try to bribe her with like the what was it, that make believe food that March had. Of course, Pioran can't accept it, so like Fushi decides to go out and go after Gugu himself. So, but yeah, so we go back to Gugu, and he decides to, well, of course, he decides to go back to work with with the other guy that he used to work with, and of course, even with his disfigurement, people are he's still able to work despite the fact that people are are always having the sideways look, with the way he looks with that what was it, that chameleon mask that he always wears.
Yeah.
And then at one point, like Gugu's boss decides to take him into his house and treat him for dinner, and then of course the guy's two sons don't take too kindly with Gugu's like appearance, and Gugu decides to take off his mask and reveal like what he looks like underneath, and this of course causes a negative reaction to it. And of course Gugu decides to just leave and then just just pretty much take care of himself from now on, and still work for the old guy. But soon afterwards, several guys decides to end up bullying him and then just rip the mask off his face. And then of course Gugu tries to put it back on, but he decides to decides to throw it away and just work without it, which causes a much more negative reaction towards people looking at his face because of how he looks.
Yeah, like now, like pretty much everybody thinks he's just a monster because of the way his face looks.
Mm-hmm. And then of course, even though he's I think what was it happened is one day he gets back home from work, and his one of his boss's sons just comes in, tells him don't come back to work at our fields again, otherwise you're gonna make my dad look bad in front of the people. So this, I don't think Gugu really needed to take that from that kid, but he just decides not to work with the guy anymore, and then he tries to get work elsewhere, but of course no one will take him in because of his disfigurement. Yeah,
he basically tries to look for more work, and then of course he remembers that he has that ring that Rian gave to him, and that she sold him that he could sell. If he sold it, he would never have to work a day again or something. So he decides to go to some trader and ask how much the ring was worth. But then he kind of has second thoughts about it and runs off because he comes to the conclusion that he would have no need for all the money, I guess, that he would get from selling the ring, because he's a monster, and that it wouldn't really help his situation or he just has no need for it. So of course this is around when I think he runs into his brother again, and his brother got thrown out of some place, and his brother is now looks really skinny, like he hasn't been eating in days or something, and he just looks really bad. So yeah, he comes across his brother, and then he decides to give his brother the ring and just leaves that with him. is like his brother wakes up and like he sees Gugu for a brief moment, and that's when Gugu says, like I don't have a brother, and just leaves him there. So it seems like whatever happened to his brother, he just got like he after he ran off, I guess he just things didn't get better for him. So yeah, I kind of wonder if his brother might come back for Gugu, or if he might, or if he's going to show up again at all. So I guess, I'm not sure what'll happen with that. But yeah, he just leaves his brother in the alley.
And of course, Gugu mentions that, he doesn't have a brother anymore, due to the fact that, his older brother Shin ended up abandoning him in the first place, and leading him into the situation where Gugu ended up getting disfigured as well. So he decides to stay back in his tent, but all of a sudden, like, a couple slave traders end up kidnapping him, attempting to sell him off to I guess to the highest bidder or something like that. And then, of course, that's when we see Fushi come in and end up rescuing him by scaring off the two slave traders attempting to kidnap him. Yeah,
basically by turning into Oginuma, the giant bear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then it's like they, Gugu and Fushi just kind of end up sort of I guess settling their differences or whatever, and
end up bonding in the end, like deciding that they're both like monsters at this point. So that's pretty much where the episode ends. Overall, I thought this was a pretty decent episode. Well, it was mostly focusing on Gugu's situation of of his disfigurement and how he would settle in the world, the way he is, and how he's going to move on with even in his current predicament. So it looks like now he's pretty much going to settle back into the Buddhist shop, and then work there from now on, and possibly work with Rin, who's now staying with them as well.
Yeah. And I guess with the next episode that Gugu will go back to the shop, and of course he doesn't want to put the mask back on again, so Rin will probably find out who he really is and see his face, and I guess that might be like one of the maybe like one of the main conflicts in the next one is her just kind of accepting like him for who he is or whatever. But also I guess what the main conflict might be now is that all the villagers know that what he really looks like, and that he's kind of like a monster, and maybe they might come for him or something, or try to kill him or try to sell him off or whatever. So because now that he's kind of like exposed himself to the villagers, they know who he is, and they might come for him, I guess. So maybe that'll be like what happens in this arc, is they might come after him or something.
Yeah, I have a feeling that we'll end up seeing Shin again, and probably try to track his brother down, and probably it's possible that that he'll become rich by selling off the ring, and probably go back to Gugu or something like that. That might be a possibility, but I don't know if Shin might end up recognizing Gugu for the way he currently looks at this point.
Yeah, and of course we know there's also Hayase that still is supposedly tracking down Fushi, so she could also come back and try to attack Fushi and Gugu, I guess. But yeah, so I mean, I agree. I thought this was a pretty good episode. It was pretty sad at times, but I like how it kind of ended with him just kind of accepting himself for who he is, and not just not relying on keeping the mask on all the time.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get to see what happens next. I'm still curious on on what Rin's current situation is, of how she's.
Oh yeah, there's that too.
How she suddenly, with someone of her stature, can somehow just work in working in a rural shop in the middle of the fields.
Yeah, I'm wondering why she wants to work and live there, considering her status. Like, I mean, it's a bit confusing. Like, I guess maybe there was something. I mean, I could assume that there is maybe something going on within her personal life or something that where she felt the need to, I guess, live and work at that shop. But yeah, maybe that's another thing. I guess we could assume that we might learn more about her backstory or something that maybe we didn't know about that might be the reason why she's there now. Yeah, but yeah, I don't really have too much else to say about this episode. I don't know if you have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, I thought it was still a good episode. I really did like, how they developed Gugu even further, and of course, Fushi, like, I thought, like, I think it's like, his scenes were a bit average. I mean, we knew like how like dreadfully inexperienced he is at doing like several tasks, and
yeah, those scenes with him cooking were kind of funny, where he's just like, he just like cuts up a giant vegetable and just, I guess, boils it or something, and then he just puts a ton of salt on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this he comes to the realization that he needs to gain more experience by learning from other people, which is which of course he'll end up learning from Gugu. Probably. I
mean, it was nice to see that Fushi can now have like normal conversations with people.
I mean, his speech pattern still needs a little bit of work, but yeah, it seems like much of the development we keep seeing in like every single episode is mostly been focused on like the other characters interacting with Fushi.
Yeah, basically like them interacting with him and him learning from them and everything around him. Yeah, but that all being said, until next Monday, we will see you all next time.